Okay, Miss Della, I have to ask you, were you an obedient child or were you a little
I, w-
mischievous?
I was, I had to be because my dad especially was strict.
Uh-huh.
And they kept me with them most
Mm-hmm.
of the time. I went to my grandparents, but as far as going for sleepovers like they do now, we didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I had cousins. Well, I'd sleep at my grandparents now and again with my cousins that were there,
Right.
but that was the only place. Other cousins, no, they would take me wherever they went, and I
So,
guess I was raised under glass, I have to say.
yeah. So
But
was that typical of a child growing up in Youngsville?
in those days, yes. And when Harold and I started dating, you might say, where if we wanted to go anywhere, they brought us.
Uh-huh.
And when he could come over at the house,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't allowed to go visit at his house until he was in the service
Mm-hmm.
and we got engaged at Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could visit
How did he propose?
through the mail.
So while he was
Oh, to
overseas?
me,
Yes.
the Christmas, he came on a furlough at a Christmas time.
Where were
And
you? When was
uh,
it was in person,
it
right?
was in person. And he came over to my house
Mm-hmm.
and asked me then
Uh-huh.
if we could get married, if I would marry him.
Do
And I
you
said
remember
yes.
how he said it?
I guess it was, will you marry me? But there was nothing about on the knee or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
We were just standing in the living room, and he presented me with this box and asked if I would marry him. And I said, yes, I would. And he opened it, but then he closed it again.
Why?
I
Why?
don't know. And I guess he wanted to make sure I said yes. So
Yes.
he opened it again and took it out and put it on my finger.
Uh-huh.
And we were married the following March. Now, as far as
What was the date?
the what now?
What was your wedding anniversary date?
March 14th,
March 14th.
1954.
Okay. So if you and him, did you ever have, like I heard about the Mardi Gras that used to be in Youngsville or the Festival of Beauties and things like that. Did you ever attend any of these parades?
No, I did one because I was on a float.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in the 12th grade.
That was Mardi Gras?
That was no, that was a Festival of Beauties.
What was that like?
It was interesting. I enjoyed it.
Uh-huh.
And there was a lot of little people with me. I was like in the back, and the little ones were they had handrails to hold on to.
Were
And
you one of the beauties?
no, I was just, I don't know, was there on the float.
Did you have a crown
It was a form of a crown.
and a pretty dress?
But it was, yes, it was a pretty dress. My mother made it. And I believe, as a matter of fact, it was Rose Savoy, that was Lola's mother, and her sister Ethel that came to my house and talked to my parents if I could be on that float. And they in turn, when my parents okayed it, well, they in turn brought the fabrics for Mama to make the dress.
You told me you were a professional seamstress,
I
so she
was.
must have taught you how to sew.
She did, and my grandmother too.
So that must have been a lot of what you did when you were growing up.
It's a lot of what I did, yes, making doll clothes and going on to starting to make things for myself. She even taught me how to make quilts, which I would do. She would do housework, and she'd let me work on her quilts.
Are these the quilts that you?
No, the quilts are different.
Oh, the
This-
quilts where you actually were stitching.
Yes.
Okay,
stitching
but those
and
blankets were on
put
a
on
loom.
bars. These blankets were made on a loom from thread that the raw cotton they had wound on a spindle,
Uh-huh.
and they'd hang it up in the ceiling on the wall up high to the ceiling, and they had a spinning wheel.
Uh-huh.
That was my great grandparents. They had the spinning wheel and they had the loom, and everyone were able to spin their thread from the raw cotton. There was yellow cotton, and there was brown, and there was white, and they would spin these they would spin the thread from the cotton and use the loom, and they would thread with different colors. Like you see, this one has different colors.
Yeah.
And they would just, this loom was, I guess, about maybe 6 feet
Oh, wow.
wide. 6 feet wide. Yes, because they had to be to fit a regular bed,
Right.
regular size bed, and drop over a little bit. So anyway, I saw them, but they burned in that old house. Not ours.
Oh.
It was Simon's house that burned. Their old house. It was moved near my grandmother.
Okay.
When she lost, there were three. She had two old sisters that were spinsters, and one brother that was bachelor that they never married, and they lived together until the first one that passed away. I think she was 89.
What was her name?
Idea, Simon. She never married, and the brother that was after her, he passed away. He was 92. His name was Gélas Simon, and the oldest Spencer sister passed away at 95.
Your family lives a long time.
Yes. And her name was Elizabeth Simon. So, and then there was my grandmother, and she had another younger sister. I haven't stopped to count how many. The oldest brother, I believe, was the Auviac that married my Grandpa Savoy's sister. And the next one that married, his name was Demas. He married a woman from St. Martinsville and lived there the remainder of his life. And after him was Elizabeth, and then Gélas, and Idea, and Ida, who was my grandmother. And after her was Estina. She was the youngest. And she died in an accident when she was 85.
You know what I wanted to ask you? Do you remember the railroad that came
Yes.
through?
The railroad that came from New
There was
Iberia.
the train depot.
Yes. It came to the depot.
It's where Public Works building is right
Exactly.
now. Okay.
And it came out from there, passed through my grandfather's property. You can still see some of the pylons that are in the coulee way back there. And it passed right behind my mother's house and traveled on to Milton. And that was back and forth.
And so Milton is where it stopped.
That's where it stopped.
But
it traveled through my grandfather's property.
And it was a passenger train, right?
It
Or was it everything?
It was everything. I don't remember it being a passenger. It was mostly, I believe, produce and delivery.
So
I don't recall seeing a
people.
passenger. It did have a caboose, but a passenger train, I don't remember it ever being.
Why do you think they took it down? Was the track just too old, or?
I don't know why it was taken down. It would come just to Youngsville after a while, but then it stopped altogether. I don't know. I can't answer that.
So I've been told, and do you remember this? A piece of the track went from the train depot over to the sugar mill, right? So it could get things back and forth. Did it cross Iberia Street?
No, there was no train that went back there. They carried their sugarcane in trailers,
Tractors?
tractors. Yeah. My daddy worked at that sugar mill.
Hold on one second.